This secondary air injection system. I'm having trouble with mine on this 2005 GMC Envoy you see behind me. I'm gonna replace some parts and try to get it working again. Let's get into it. As we all know, secondary air injection systems are fun. Not really, they are a pain and cost a lot when you have a shop do the repairs on the fault in the system. Matter of fact, the 05 Toyota 4Runner that I recently bought had a problem with the secondary air injection system. Thankfully, the previous owner was the one who took care of that, sending it to the dealership, and it cost thousands to have repaired and replaced all the parts. Today, for me, I'm on the 05 Envoy, and I'm gonna be replacing a couple of parts with the secondary air injection system, namely the pump and the relay. If you've been following the channel, you'll know that a few years ago, I had a problem with the secondary air injection system and replaced this valve right here. But of course, I'm getting more codes for the secondary air injection system. So there's two things that I didn't replace last time. I bought all the parts, but only replaced this valve up front here on the engine because the other parts were pretty darn expensive. And I thought, well, if they weren't broke, why would I fix them? Well, I kind of wish I did now because I think that it's one of the other two parts that I didn't replace last time, the pump and the relay, that is causing me issues. Real quick, what exactly is the secondary air injection system? Well, it was introduced back in the 60s, believe it or not, as a mode to reduce hydrocarbons and carbon monoxide in vehicle emissions during cold start. Back then, before catalytic converters, it was a main method of reducing emissions, but now with catalytic converters, in that upstream position, it helps to light off those emissions and heat up that catalytic converter to operating temperature. To do this, there is a pump which pumps fresh air or oxygen into that exhaust manifold before the catalytic converter. This oxygen helps to burn any unburned fuel in that exhaust, which also helps to heat up the catalytic converter. And once that catalytic converter is heated up to operating temperature, it then takes over and the secondary air injection shuts off. Now, this all takes place during cold start because, well, that's the whole point, to clean up those cold start emissions. Once everything is up to operating temperature, including that catalytic converter, well, it's all a lot more efficient and the secondary air injection is not needed. So there's your 2 cents on exactly what a secondary air injection system is. Now, just under the front driver's door, the secondary air injection system is located inside the frame rail. You can see the pump right here. I'm gonna start this vehicle up and we're gonna see if we can hear it. Now, I will say one thing that's giving me a clue as to the pump starting to fail is it's not as loud as it used to be. Sometimes I feel like I don't even hear it. So I kind of have a suspicion about the pump, though I'm not 100% sure yet. Here we go. I can feel it. Yep, I heard that thing run and it just kicked off as well. Well, I went ahead and removed the valve that was located down there. I now have it sitting here. And the reason why I did that is I want to look at the valve as I put the key in the ignition and turn it over to see if that valve inside is moving and thus this part is still working properly. Okay, here's that secondary air injection pump and the relay is right up here. Actually, this is it. The relay should be fairly simple to swap out. You're just gonna unplug this one and plug a new one in. Of course, we just heard that this pump is working, which means the relay is working. But is something intermittent? Is something drawing too much power? I don't know. I keep getting these codes and I figured, you know what? Better rule these things out. Just unplugs and everything looks absolutely perfect. Sure, this wasn't the problem, but we're gonna swap it out. Now, as for this, these two hoses here sometimes can hold water. So we'll take the top one off. No water in that one. I think, there we go. And no water in that one. There we go. Well, here's that bracket I just removed for the pump. You can see there are these rubber isolators, and then this little piece on the side is where that relay sits. And here's that old pump, and seemingly still working, but perhaps it's drawing too much amperage. I don't know. And here's that new pump, and you can see it is literally completely identical. Even down to the manufacturer where it says Pierburg in Germany. It says assembled in the US. This is a genuine GM part. And again, here's the old one. You can see the same manufacturer and a genuine GM part. So I guess we'll see if this solves the problem. The problem, of course, being the codes that I'm getting for the secondary air injection system. Sometimes the motors on these pumps can end up drawing a little too much amperage, or perhaps even be intermittent. Everything seems to be working as I checked it today, but that doesn't mean that it's always working. So let's go ahead and swap in the new pump, see if we can get this thing back together. I am going to remove these rubber isolators that are on this bracket, and that's because looking at this new pump, it comes with its own brand new ones. To do that, we just have some 10mm nuts back here. And once that nut's removed, the isolator just comes right out. And then all I have to do is slide everything together and just tighten those down. Now we can plug in our hoses. 1, 2. We have our brand new genuine GM relay right here. And we're going to go ahead and plug this thing in like a glove right there. Just going to tighten these bolts down all the way and this thing is done. Well, there's something I need to show you. So I got everything buttoned up underneath, but I wanted to take this valve out so I can look inside and see if that valve was moving. Basically just verifying that this thing is still working. This is the port right here. And as you can see, yeah, I have a tap in there. That's an M8 by 1.25 tap. And that's because as I was putting the bolts back in for this valve, well, I felt them skip over and just start stripping out. Now this is all aluminum, so obviously it's very easy to strip these holes out. This one back here was stripped a lot worse than this one. I feel like I got this one tight. And I have already cleaned up these bolts, but the threads were completely clogged with aluminum. But my big question now is, am I gonna have to use, what are those things called, a helicoil, to go into these threads and a different bolt? I just don't know. Really upset right now. Yeah, this is turning into one of those jobs that should have been really easy, and then you touch something else and then it shatters. So in hindsight, I wish I never would have touched that valve, but I just wanted to confirm that it was still working. Just so that when I started the car after I replaced that relay and pump, if there was still an issue, I would know that it would have to be this valve or something else entirely. But I did verify that the valve is working, but obviously not now that the threads are completely stripped out. So I don't know what to do at this point. Comment below and let me know what you would do. I know there's a thing out there called a helicoil. I think that's what it's called. It's like new threads you screw into the old threads and you just get a different size bolt, I think. This is not good. Not good at all. It's been a while, probably a week, since I was clearing the threads out on the head there for this thing. I had to order a brand new gasket. This one, it just looks smashed. And while it might work, the problem is those threads I retapped. I don't know if those threads were completely trashed or if they were full of the anti-seize that I installed when I originally replaced this valve. And so I'm kind of sort of hoping that maybe I had so much anti-seize on those bolts that it kind of gummed everything up and yeah, trashed the threads, but maybe not so bad. My hope is now that I've cleaned up the bolts and the threads there in that aluminum head, that it'll hold the 18 foot-pounds I think that the torque needs to get to, and a brand new gasket to hopefully seal things off. That's my hope. What I'm kind of assuming here is that these threads are not going to hold and that I'm going to have to install helicoils, which involves a little bit. I'm going to have to get specialized tools, a 90-degree angle, so that I can drill these holes out, retap them, and install the helicoils. I'm really hoping I don't have to do that. The thing is look at the block here. You can see all this soot that's built up on this aluminum block right here. Now, that tells me that exhaust gases have been escaping, and that seems like it's kind of a lot. If that's the case, that means this original gasket that I had in there wasn't doing its job. And that's probably partially my fault because I have taken this valve off in the recent past and checked to make sure that it was working when I started getting the, secondary air injection codes about a year ago. I reinstalled everything and I thought everything was fine. But obviously we can see we have exhaust gases that were leaking out, and maybe that's been causing a little bit of a rough idle issue I'm having. I'm gonna clean this surface a little bit, apply the gasket, and see if we can't bolt this valve back on and get it to torque out at about 18 foot-pounds. Here's one of those bolts that I cleaned up. You can see the threads look like brand new, and it does thread in there really nice. So there's a little bit of play. I'm assuming that's probably normal. Now, one thing I just learned through this process is that these bolt holes back here are actually through holes. So these holes go all the way and connect in with the exhaust port. And I remember when I initially changed this valve that these bolts had some white stuff on them, and I'm realizing now that it was thread sealant. So I'm gonna go ahead and install some thread sealant on these bolts. Let's try to get this going. Please, Lord. All right, guys, this is the moment of truth. I have my torque wrench set to 18 foot-pounds. Okay, I'm just gonna go evenly back and forth so I don't over tighten one side before the other side. Come on, baby. Come on, baby. 18, it's all I need. Ooh, I just hit it. One more, come on. Yes, yes. Thank you, Lord, thank you, Lord. Yes. Oh, that's so good. Tell me that that's real. And we just torqued to 18 foot-pounds on stripped out threads that I retapped. I don't want to press it, like my brain is telling me to take it to 20 or something just to be sure, but I mean, if that's all it calls for, and that's just off of a video I watched, I haven't even looked up the official spec. We got that tube on. Yeah, I think it's that one. I'll leave it loose for now. Well, everything is put back together. I have the air filter box and everything, all the tubes, hoses, connections, electrical, everything. Even the transmission dipstick mounted back to the valve that we just installed. Everything is buttoned up underneath. Let's go ahead and start this thing up, see if there's a difference. Well, remember, we replaced the secondary air injection pump down below along with the relay. So I am curious if that's gonna sound, I don't know, stronger or just any different from the way the original one sounded. And I do remember in the distant past, the original one sounded louder. And then more recently, when I was testing it here during this process, it sounded a lot more quiet. I don't know what that means, but I am curious what this brand new one's gonna sound like. I was able to determine that that check valve under the hood was working, was opening and moving. So that is a new part. It's a official OEM GM part. I know that's working, so we're just, obviously that's why I left it and just got a new gasket. So I'm hoping that maybe something, somehow, some way, that check valve under the hood was leaking this whole time and causing, the O2 sensors possibly to not read correctly. I don't know. Let's go ahead and start this thing up and see if we hear a difference. I don't know yet. I'm really not sensing anything different, but I just don't know yet. I think I'd have to get out and drive this thing. All right, you've seen me go through this process. I've replaced the pump and that relay, even though you saw they were working. Now, I don't know if they were intermittent or pulling too much amperage Or maybe there was just a problem with those two pieces somewhere in line, I don't know. But the thing is, I've already replaced the valve under the hood, so that is fairly new. I took that valve off and watched the inside as I turned the key and saw that it was working. And the valve itself being fairly new, I kind of expected that it was still working. So my only other two parts of the system that could be malfunctioning and were original to the vehicle were that pump and the relay. Although they were expensive, I chose to replace them just to rule those two pieces out and hopefully get this system working like it should, and therefore I won't get any more codes. Now, what you also saw is I started the vehicle and I felt no improvement over the overall running of the engine. I've been dealing with a somewhat rough idle for a long time now. I'm trying to solve that problem. My hope was that replacing these secondary air injection parts would somehow solve that rough running issue. I don't know, maybe that pump was drawing a lot of amperage, which was causing other things to malfunction. It was a pie in the sky shot, but I thought, hey, I'm already getting codes for the secondary air injection system. Let's just fix it all, make sure it's all working, and maybe that will fix something else. It didn't happen. Putting my hand on the engine and just listening, I could still hear that it was running exactly the same as before. So moving forward, I am determined to solve this rough running at idle issue. And the next thing you're going to see me do in the very next video is a full compression test. Spark plugs out. We're going to inspect those spark plugs, and I'm going to do a compression test on all of the cylinders, which I have done before, but before I didn't remove all of the spark plugs. This time I am doing that. And we're going to see not only what my compression is from cylinder to cylinder, but also what the condition of the spark plugs is telling us. And there is something interesting, let me tell you. Something that has to do with the fourth cylinder. Now, I have a suspicion as to what it is, and I have some hopes as to what it's hopefully not. But you'll have to wait for the next video to see all of that. So if that interests you at all, make sure you hit that subscribe button and stay tuned. I'm Jimmy for One Road. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, don't forget to hit that thumbs up. It really helps this video and the whole channel. And I will see you in the next one.